After my husband caught me cheating with my boss, 8 years have passed. Subscribe for more story videos. 8 years ago, my life spiraled into chaos. It all started the night my husband, Tom, discovered my affair with my boss, David. His discovery wasn't by chance. He had grown suspicious over time. The late nights at the office, sudden business trips, and the emotional distance that had crept into our marriage had all been warning signs. But nothing could have prepared me for the devastation on his face when he confronted me with the truth. The affair wasn't some epic love story. It was a series of poor decisions during a rough patch in our marriage. I had worked at the company for 5 years, and David, my boss, was charming, successful, and seemed to understand my frustrations at home in ways Tom hadn't. What began as harmless conversations eventually escalated into something much more. Deep down, I knew it was wrong, but the thrill and secrecy blinded me to the consequences. I was completely wrong. That night, Tom found emails, explicit, undeniable evidence of my betrayal. I couldn't deny it. There was no point. His expression of hurt, anger, and disbelief broke me. Without saying much, he left the house that night and didn't return for 2 days. Those were the longest, most agonizing days of my life. When Tom finally returned, it wasn't to stay. He came back only to pack his things and leave again, this time for good. In the months that followed, everything was a blur. I took a leave from work because facing David and pretending everything was fine felt unbearable. Tom filed for divorce quickly, and I didn't contest it. I knew I had shattered our marriage, and there was no fixing it. I moved out of our home into a small apartment across town, a place where no one knew me. For the first time in a long time, I found solace in anonymity. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. We didn't have children, which simplified the legal process, but emotionally, it was still a wreck. Our families had been connected for years, and the fallout rippled far beyond just the two of us. The fallout from my actions affected far more than just Tom and me. Friends took sides, while others stayed neutral and simply drifted away. The loneliness was suffocating, but I knew I had no one to blame but myself. Eventually, I returned to work, though I resigned from my job at David's company. I couldn't endure the whispers in the office or the way my colleagues looked at me with pity or judgment. I found a new job at a smaller firm where no one knew my past. It was a fresh start, but the shame and regret stayed with me, always lurking beneath the surface. I buried myself in work, hoping to keep my mind occupied, but there was no escaping the truth. I had lost everything that truly mattered. Over the next couple of years, I tried to rebuild my life. I started going to therapy to understand why I had made such destructive choices, why I had risked my marriage for something so meaningless. It wasn't just about the affair. Therapy helped me see that the cracks in my marriage had appeared long before David came into the picture. I had failed to communicate my feelings to Tom and neglected to work with him to address the problems in our marriage. Instead, I had taken the easy way out, searching for solutions in all the wrong places. Meanwhile, Tom had moved on, or at least, that's what I gathered through mutual friends. About a year after the divorce, Tom started dating again. Eventually, he met someone serious. Her name was Emily. She was nothing like me. Kind, grounded, and genuine. From what I heard, they were happy together, and a part of me was relieved that he had found someone who could give him the stability I couldn't. 3 years after the divorce, I ran into Tom at a friend's wedding. It was the first time we had seen each other since everything had happened. We exchanged polite greetings, but the distance between us felt impossible to bridge. I could still see traces of pain in his eyes, and guilt hit me like a wave all over again. I didn't know if he would ever be able to forgive me, or if I could forgive myself. As time went on, I kept going to therapy and focused on rebuilding my life. I joined a support group for people who had experienced infidelity in their relationships, both those who had been cheated on and those who had been unfaithful. Listening to others share their stories was eye-opening. It helped me understand the deeper consequences of my actions and the impact they had on everyone involved. I came to realize that the affair didn't just hurt Tom, it hurt me too. It had warped how I saw myself, leaving me grappling with regret and shame. By the 5th year after the divorce, I had finally found some peace. I started a small business with a friend from my new job, something I had always dreamed of doing but never had the courage to pursue. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something meaningful again. It wasn't a replacement for the life I had lost, but it was a new chapter, and that was enough. Around that time, I heard that Tom had gotten engaged to Emily. When I saw the pictures on social media, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me was genuinely happy for him. He deserved all the love and happiness in the world. But another part of me felt the weight of everything I had lost, a life that could have been mine if I had been stronger, more honest, and less selfish. 8 years have passed since that fateful night. Tom and Emily are now married and recently had their first child. When I heard the news, I sent them a card congratulating them and wishing them all the best. I wasn't expecting a response, but to my surprise, Tom reached out a few weeks later. He thanked me for the card and asked if I'd be open to meeting for coffee. He said there were things he wanted to talk about, not to rekindle anything, but for closure. When we met, it was like seeing an old friend after a long time, familiar yet distant. We talked about our lives, where we'd ended up, and how much we had changed. Tom admitted that, while the affair had hurt him deeply, he had come to realize that we both had a part in the breakdown of our marriage. He regretted not being more attentive, not noticing the signs that something was wrong, and taking our relationship for granted. Hearing this didn't make my actions any less wrong, but it helped to know he no longer saw me as the villain of the story. He told me he had forgiven me, not for my sake, but for his own peace. It had taken him years, but he realized that holding on to anger only held him back. He had a new life, a new family, and he needed to let go of the past to fully embrace his future. We parted ways with a mutual understanding that we had both grown from the experience. There was no dramatic reconciliation or rekindling of old feelings. Instead, there was a quiet acknowledgement that we had shared a part of our lives, and that chapter had ended. Today, my business has grown beyond anything I ever expected. I've started dating again, but I'm much more careful and thoughtful about what I want and need in a relationship. I've learned that true happiness isn't found in fleeting excitement or distractions, but in the steady, honest work of building a life you're proud of. The affair was the most painful mistake I've ever made, but it taught me more about myself than I could have imagined. I'm not the same person I was 8 years ago, and for that, I'm grateful. I've learned to be honest with myself, to face my flaws, and to strive to be a better version of who I am. The past can't be changed, and I'll always carry the weight of my choices. But as the years go by, that weight feels a little easier to bear. I've come to realize that while I lost my marriage, I found something else myself. And sometimes, that's the hardest and most valuable discovery of all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more story videos.